to Smite. We're doing an item tier list for the entire game. 11.2, I think, is the patch, but basically the nut patch. You guys know what I'm talking about. We're going to be talking about every single item. There's a lot to get through, so we're going to try and speed run it. Basically, what's defining the meta right now, what's buildable, what's at least viable, and what is horrible, and you should basically never build. We're going to go through every item, the glyphs, the shards, and the relics, and just try and get through it. The only thing we don't have on here is the actual starter items themselves, but we'll talk about a little bit when we talk about each starter item upgrade, so not going to yap too much here. I'm just going to get right into it. I think it's in alphabetical order for the most part. So Absolution, decent item. I would say it's more of a counter build item, especially in the support role. I'll throw that in B. Abyssal, not a great item. I think it's maybe slightly underrated, but mages aren't as relevant right now because of the hunter mids and everything. So the cooldown reduction that it applies isn't that crazy important. So I'll also throw it in B. Archer is a pretty dang good item. Good stats for both physical and magical. Helps you get a little bit more damage on soul lane tank builds, or maybe even jungle if you're going that route. Archmages, pretty freaking horrible. Never should build really over Conduit or Gem of Focus, the other upgrade, except for maybe on like super burst characters like Scylla, and that only have like a 1 or 2 ability burst combo. Maybe New Wall, but still, even then, like Gem of Focus is still better in my opinion. Erudite actually not too great right now, just a little expensive. Definitely still has its viability because it's a good jungler item and junglers are OP. Aussie is okay. I don't think you should ever really build Aussie over Devs. I think Devs is just way stronger. That flood pen that Devs provides is so strong for the full build. Whether it's crit or the kin size build, the pen really applies for that. The kins and the oboe and everything. But I'd say it's slightly better than those items. Less counter build. Atalanta's not really ever going to be building this in ADC, but it's a decent jungler item for auto attack junglers, which are actually pretty prevalent right now with Golden Shard. We'll talk about that later. So I'd actually throw it in A. It's a pretty decent jungler item. Something you can rush in the jungle and feel pretty good about. Axeon, honestly, pretty meta defining right now. I wouldn't say it's quite broken, so I'm not going to throw it up there, but very good on all those auto attack cylinders that are prevalent in the meta. Bancroft's not that great. I think you might see a little bit more of it now that Rejuvenating Heart got buffed. You might be seeing it on Anubis mids and maybe on characters like Freya, and then maybe you can get that Rejuvenating Heart and see if it can heal your team. It's really not that bad. It is Bancroft at the end of the day, so Berserker's a pretty decent item. I'd throw it in A. Nothing too crazy, makes you pretty tanky, and usually building Phalanx over it, but on a lot of auto attack cylinders you can go both, and I think it's a really nice combo with a ton of defense. I forget what this one's called. Boomerang blade, demon blade thingy. I don't know what it's called, but it's the boomerang crit item. Actually not that great. I think you should go Wind Demon over this most of the time. Wind Demon did get nerfed, so you might see it a little bit more, but Blood Soaked just nerfed too much, not nearly what it used to be, not a good enough item anymore. You should never really build it. Bloodforge is a good item. This is going to be built in jungle most of the time. You're never seeing this in ADC, but it's a really good item in that full lifesteal jungler build, and it helps you dive and be able to go from one target to the next because you get that shield. Bluestone Brooch, meta defining, absolutely broken item. It's taking over the mid lane. Part of the reason you can play physical mids is because the late game is so good with Bluestone Brooch. You just do so much damage, especially on characters like AMC and Marty. Another meta-defining broken item is Book of Thoth. Best mage item in the game, and it's not closed. Especially with the removal of mage passive. You barely get any power in mage builds these days, and Book of Thoth basically gives you a third of all the power you're going to get in a build. It's just absolutely insane. Your one-stop shop for all of your power. Brawler's just a B+. It's a fine item. You actually don't feel that great building it in jungle because there's other items that you'd prefer to go. It kind of just messes up your build path a little bit, but it's anti-heal. Good pen, good power. Can't really go too wrong with it. Regrowth actually not in too great of a spot anymore, especially because if you're building into that tree, you usually want to go Breastplate because Breastplate has the glyph option. So there's not a whole ton of option or reason to build this unless you're just trying to have fun and move around really fast. And Breastplate, of course, is a good item. The glyphs are super strong still, both of them, not as OP as they were before, but Blue Glyph is underrated, and Breastplate itself is just a pretty good item. CDR, protections, what more do you want? Boombas, man. Whatever happened to this item, it's fine. You need to build in jungle all the time, so I'll throw it in B+, but it is just a shell of what it once was. Man, that item was so broken, meta-defining for such a long time, and it was so fun, but it was broken. I actually think Boomba's Spear is better. It's harder to do FG right now, so Spear's really good for that. It gives you pen. It gives you a lot more damage than Boomba's, and you don't need autos to proc the passive. I just think it's a better option if you're going to that Boomba's, so I'd throw it in A. Cat Club, honestly, I'm going to throw in C, maybe B. If you go any of the other hammers, I think it's better. Runeforge is going to end up being better. If you're an auto attacker, Frostbound's better. The only character I could see this being built on is maybe Guam, but even then, Scepter is even fine on him. So yeah, I just don't really like this item. The base stats aren't great. I think it only gives you 20 fizz power, which is not great. Cannoneer's honestly a bad item. It did get buffed this patch. It's getting close to that point where it's like its base stats with how cheap it is might warrant it to be a good item. Because sometimes there's just force in the meta like that, but I would say really not that great. Karen's Coin, pretty good item. It's one of the better mid items right now. You're 20% pen. It's either that or Typhons that you're gonna go. So definitely Karen's is a good option. Chronos Pendant, also not too bad right now. In the past, it was kind of just a really weak mage item that was only bought by noobs, but I actually think it's pretty decent, especially with the conduit build going around right now. So not a lot of times you build both these items together. Compassion, not what it used to be, but it's still fine. I throw it in B+. Definitely an option for support builds. Contagion, I also think is pretty good. I like to go it. Keeps people in combat, has 2 passives. Anti-heal is always strong, and that mystical type effect that it gives you helps you stack up prophetic, which I really enjoy. Redstone, just more of a counter build option. I'd even throw it probably in B, maybe B+. It's just around there. It's good with the right build with Pridwin and on the right character, and especially if they have multiple auto attackers. So like I said, more of a counter build. Cyclopean, pretty bad item. I'd honestly throw it in C probably. I honestly don't even really think you should be playing auto attack mages. Maybe Freya with Boombas, because she can go Boomba Spear and one-shot fire. It's kind of nice, but Cyclopean just isn't that great of an item. It's basically just a worse Kins by a mile. Dawnbringer, actually a little bit better than it used to be. I'm going to throw it in B+. Some characters can make pretty good use out of it, like Nike and characters that dive really hard. Even I like to build it on Baka because I think it's fun. But yeah, it's not too bad. Deathbringer, of course, A+. Actually, maybe you can throw it in meta-defining Broken because the glyphs are so strong, and the crit build is pretty prevalent. I actually don't think the crit build is what you should be building. I think the Kins Shred build is better, but people are complaining about crit for a while now, and I can't really ignore that. The data is there, so there it is. Deathbringer in meta-defining Broken. Death's Embrace is a strong item. I like it a lot, and I think it's probably underrated right now, but it's just because everyone's been building Axe, and Axe is so good. But I think it's a really strong item, especially when it's meta, man. It can be like A+. It just does so much. Death Temper just got changed, so it only needs 5 stacks instead of 10 stacks to get it fully stacked. And with the full crit build with Death Temper and the multiplicative or whatever it's called, that wording that everybody knows, it makes your crits hit for like 1,500, so it's pretty insane. But you still have to stack it off minions, so you're relying too much on the waves being near you, so I'm going to throw it in B, maybe B+. Wind Demon just got nerfed, and I think you're going to be seeing less and less of it, because it wasn't even that great before, in my opinion, and it got nerfed, so I'm going to throw it in B, and we'll throw in B+. Demonic, honestly, like I said, you shouldn't really be playing auto attack mages in general, but I guess I'll throw it in C. Dev Gloves, very good, A+ item. I'm not going to say it's quite meta-defining, because you can go the Claws, and you still could go Aussie if you really want, but I think very strong item. This is the arrow that doesn't give you crit chance, but gives you flat damage and a bunch of attack speed. This is one that you build on magicals because they can't get the other one because it gives physical crit chance, which magicals don't get. It's fine. I'd throw it in B. The base stats are, as far as like the attack speed that you get, I think it gives you 60% attack speed if you stack it up. It's actually really nice, but in general, you're not really building it. Divine, a pretty good item for mages. Helps with their clear because the passive applies to minions as well. Just good AoE anti-heal. Decent flat pen. Pretty cheap. Can't really go too wrong with it. Dominance, good item as well. Kind of a one-stop shop for ADC's pen. But keep in mind that the pen from this does not apply to your proc items. So like Kin Size, Oboe. It only applies to the flat basic attack damage that your autos are doing. So Doom Orb, not the greatest right now. I've seen some builds with it where people are going like full movement speed with Doom Orb and Karen's Coin and Gem of Focus, and that seems pretty strong. And it does have 10% pen on it, so it can help with that. But really not that crazy. I'd throw it in B+, probably in line with a lot of these items. Emperor's more of it's like a game of chicken. Whoever builds this first is like the bigger pussy, and then the other team has to build it as well, because you're basically just saying, oh, I want all my towers to do all the work. We don't actually want to play the game. But no, in reality, it's a cheap item, good for sieges. You're not going to be seeing it every game, but it can be useful. Ethereal, they nerfed it a while ago when it was in the meta a ton, and it doesn't hit like it used to. I think it's a fine item, but I'm going to throw it in B, nothing more than that. Fey Hoops, I would throw in Horrible Never Build. They did change it a little bit recently, and I think if you're playing characters like Guan, Horus, sometimes even Umoja, it can still be fine. So I'll throw it in B for that reason. Failnaught, pretty freaking good. You're seeing it a lot in mid builds with the EMC, Marty's, Chirons. Can be very useful. Frostbound, not great. I'll throw it in B+, though. I just think the other hammers it's like it's always a competition of hammers right now. Basically, you're all handymen and you're working in the house. And I actually think it's kind of underrated because the base stats are so nice. So I'll throw it in B plus. Thebes A plus, maybe even meta defining. I'll throw it in A plus though because I think prophetic is better. And but you can go this in solo as well. Great staple support item. Crazy stats on it and good auras for the team. Gem of Focus, I think, is a very okay. If we're not just talking about conduit, but the actual upgrade itself is one of the best upgrades in the game. 15% damage increase and 15% movement speed. It's insane. Definitely A plus. Gem of ISO, throw it in B. Has its uses to counter shields because it does that now and slows them. But I'm just not a huge fan of this item. I can see it in some like Guardian solo builds as like your 1 damage item to counter like a Karen on the enemy team who's shielding a lot, or Kepri. But Genji's actually fallen off a little bit. I actually never really build it just because you'll get enough CDR from your other items like Prophetic and Pridwin, which I'm going to talk about, but also just because the other magical defense items are better, like Heartward, which is what I was going to say, or Pestilence. So, but still, it's a B plus. Honestly, Glad Shield, one of the most overrated items in the game. I'll throw it in B plus because you can't really go wrong building it, but I personally think it's overrated. The damage from the passive is basically negligible. Really not worth even considering it if you're buying it as like a damage item, quote unquote. And I think other items will just perform better, like a Void Shield. Golden Blade, not necessarily an obsolete item, but when Golden Shard is in the game, I just don't see any reason to ever build this. You can just go Golden Shard and you'll be fine. Even on the characters that need like the clear, Golden Shard will be plenty, like Baka or Kali early game. You don't need it. Griffin Wing, kind of a weird item. I think it doesn't really have that much of a place, and it kind of just lowers your overall DPS if you're going like for pure damage in your ADC build, as in like as long as you're hitting all your autos. But if this increases the amount of autos that you hit, then it can increase your DPS, if that makes sense. So maybe if you need it, but not a very good item. Hastened, also not a very good item. It's very like just like a couple characters you might build it on, but it's just like horrible stats, way too expensive. I'm gonna throw it in C. Hastened, which is like Katana's big brother, actually pretty decent. You know, it's maybe the one thing that a magical ADC would have the advantage of, like a Freya, and you would probably rush it on her, so I'd throw it in B. Heartseeker, pretty good item right now. Does a lot of damage, much better than Crusher. Crusher is much worse. I would not build Crusher over Heartseeker ever, and you're going to be seeing Heartseeker in most builds in the mid lane with the, the AMCs and the Marnies. Plus, it's also good in the jungle, which we all want to talk about. Base Heartward is actually not that great, and the only reason you ever build it is for the glyphs. So since the base isn't amazing, it's just like a fine magical defense item, I'll throw it in B. But once we talk about the glyphs, you'll see how good it is. The Shield Benevolence, I think this one. Wait, what is this one called? Heroism. Yeah, Heroism, the one that gives you shields when people get CC'd. Actually pretty decent. It's very annoying. I would say it's more annoying than it is good, because I would say Compassion or items are actually a little bit more effective at mitigating damage, because this is just like a shield that you see, so it's frustrating. Plus you can counter shields with like Erosions and Gem of Isos and Venom Executioner and all that. So yeah, just B plus. Hunter's Cow, actually not that great. I'd throw it in B. Leader's Cow is much better, which we'll talk about in a second. It's fine to go, but Hydra's pretty strong. Gonna be seeing in a lot of jungler builds. It's just like a good cheap item, CDR, basically everything you need in the jungle, a little bit of pen. So this is Infused Sigil. I actually don't think is that great. Not only because the early game with the base sigil is very hard to get away with, even though I've been building a lot, as you guys could probably see in my videos. It's just not that great of an item because you can't actually time when the explosions goes off, so you can't actually connect it a lot of the time. So it basically just becomes useless. I think the other sigil is much better. Jotun's, very good item. Cheap, 20% CDR, good damage. Seeing it built in solo, seeing it built in jungle, seeing it built in mid as well. And then when we talk about the glyphs, you'll see even more. Leader's Cow, good item. Good passive, good base stats, gives you a little bit of health and a bunch of lifesteal. Helps ADC survive late game, and I think Leather Cow is the starter item that you should go every game in ADC. Lonos is fine. On some mage supports, you can see it built, but it's not really meta defining. It's not so good that you're gonna be bumped up to here and you're gonna be seeing mage supports all the time. Sickle, pretty horrible item. I don't really see you should ever build this. Base stats are horrible on it now. I almost want to say horrible never build. I'll throw it in horrible never build. Magi is always just an item when heavy CC comps or comps with characters that rely super hard on their first initial CC, like Naja, Willick, stuff like that. So just a counter build option. Throw it in B plus for that. Mill Renewal, not really that great. Anti-heal is pretty strong right now, and this is an entire like item built on in combat healing, so not great. I want to everyone, please stop building this item. Stop building mannequins and building Hidden Blade. It is such a horrible item. It requires you to be out of combat to even do the damage. It doesn't even do that much more damage than like a Bluestone proc would. Just stop building this item, please. Mannequin's Mace, however, is actually pretty good right now. I'll throw it in A. Sort of maybe even teetering on A+. I would say just A because I don't really actually see it that much in the jungle. I think other junglers are a little bit better with without having to go mannequins, but definitely a strong item. And that upgrade, it shreds fire, it shreds Titan, shreds every objective, so and then it shreds gods as well. I was about to say humans. Manticore Spike's not what it used to be. Still a fine item. Good base stats. Good procs on the right characters. Mantle, I'll throw in B+. You can never really go wrong with building a Mantle of Discord in these days. Good on carries, good on tanks. I actually don't build it that much on tanks because I think there's other items to go. Midgardian, I actually think probably the best physical defense item in the game. 32% slow, 32% attack speed slow. Insane value, one of the few things that can actually make you tanky against an ADC. Mystical and A+, maybe even meta-defining because it's sort of taken over the support role and changed the characters that you'd want to play there. So because of that, I'll throw it in meta-defining broken. And of course, it's still viable in solo. Definitely a strong item. I'm going to throw Obsidian in A. I might bring Karen's down to A as well. Both these pen options are good. It just kind of depends on your character. But mages in general are a little bit worse, so I don't want to throw it in A+ because that would make it seem like you should play them just to build these items, when that's not the case. Oboe, in my opinion, one of the best items in the game, dude, and I think it's still underrated. That's why I think you should go the kin size Oboe build, just because you can't really build Oboe with crit. It just doesn't work as far as going pen and everything that you need. So very strong item. Also, when combined with a Meta Executioner, you get AoE anti-heal on a Hunter, which is the one thing that they've always lacked. So yeah, Oni Hunter is pretty good. One of the better magical defense items. Helps you with mitigation. Mitigation is one of the few things that actually makes you feel tanky in Smite. So I would throw it in A. This is the crit arrow. So the one that gives you physical strike chance, which is actually pretty good. If you can get to the late game with this, it's good. I still recommend going Leather Cow because it just gives you way too much pressure in the early to mid game. And there's so much to fight over. But if you can get to this late game, it's a very strong item. So I'd throw it in A. This is still a good item. I think maybe you'll see more of alternate timeline and conduit nowadays. This is called Pendulum of Ages, the one that gives you basically, I think, like 180 magical power. So it's a pretty good item when it comes to that because Book of Thought's the only thing that's comparable. Pestilence, I think one of the best magical defense item in the game. One of the best base stats at 70 magical protections plus 15 HP 5. A really good passive that gives you basically 55%, I think, anti-heal. Very, very strong. Phalanx, meta-defining. Absolutely busted item. Can't believe this item didn't get nerfed in the nut patch. It was broken before. It's still broken. Really cheap. Gives you so many stats. Crazy stat stick. It's so annoying, and it makes the lane so boring. I can't believe they didn't change it. Poly, really not that great of an item. Combined with Book of Thoth can get some decent damage numbers, but I mean, most characters just aren't going to use it very well. Pridwin, pretty good. Actually, base stat Pridwin isn't that great, like the base Pridwin. I'd even throw base Pridwin in B+, because all it does is give you 30 of each prot and 20% CDR. I don't even think it gives you 30 of each prot. I think it's 25 of each prot. So really not that great, but when it comes to the glyph, we'll talk about that. Prophetic, in my opinion, probably meta-defining. Yeah, I want to throw it in meta-defining. I think it's better than Thebes. I love building it in solo. One of the few items that makes you feel tanky as long as you can stack it. It's also very fun, the mini games, just to run around and stack it. So yeah, I'll throw it in meta-defining. Protector, just fine. Some of the changes they made to Protector and I going into this year I thought were a little weird and wonky. I still think they are, but it's a fine item. Pythagram's horrible, never build. I was the biggest champion of this item for the longest time. I made so many builds with it in solo. I built it when no one else built it because I thought it was good and underrated, and I think it always was, and it always was up until a point when Mage Meta and solo ruined the item. Because, you know, they had to nerf it somehow, so now this item's just obsolete. Don't ever build it. Kin size, of course. We're going to throw that in meta-defining broken. You see it built in solo. ADC. Jungle sometimes. Does way too much damage. Absolutely busted. Rage. Really not that great of a crit item because it doesn't give you any base stats apart from crit chance and power. But it does give you a lot of both, so it's fine. Rain does. Horrible, never build. Literally never build this over Conduit. Ever. There's literally no reason. Unless you're physical, but even then, Bluestone's going to be better, so build that. Relic Dagger, it's fine. The glyphs are actually pretty decent. It's a good support item. And relics are already kind of a low cooldown, so you can kind of spam with Relic Dagger. It's quite nice. Rite of Asclepius, really not that great of an item. Don't have much to say about it. Healing's not even that much in the meta, so throw it in B. Rod Judy, B+. It's fine. When you go a lot of items that increase your overall percentage damage, like Gem of Focus, Staff of Mirrodin, Rod Judy, it can combine for a lot of damage, so I think it's actually pretty decent right now. Dreamforged, I'd throw in A. One of the better, like, aggressive power options for tank solos. and sometimes in jungle if you're playing like Naja or Willix or some like CC heavy characters. Sacrificial. It's actually not too bad. I'll throw it in B+, but base vamp you just can never really get away with. So the starter, bad. Upgrade, pretty good. Seer, actually pretty decent. I'd build Seer over Protector most of the time now just because it gives you that objective, burn, and threat, and the ability to see wards in the jungle is quite nice. It also lets you see invisible characters, by the way. Little known fact about that. But very, very good because it's pretty hard to do Fire Giant right now, and being able to just unlock your character to do that is pretty nice. Boon, horrible. Literally never build this over Embrace, which is going to be going up into A+, or we'll just throw it in A. It's a fine item. I think most of the time you're going to be seeing War Flag is the issue, but the upgrade's still really strong. The auras are nice. We do have Void Shield and Void Stone or Void Damaru to counter it now, so because of that, I'll throw it down in B+. But yeah, it's a fine default starter item and upgrade that you can get every game, especially if you're not comfortable in support. But I do think War Flag is better. Serrated, a very strong item. I'll throw it in A. One-stop shop for your percentage pen in the jungle. And sometimes you can see it as like a one-item off build in like a Soul Lane build. You can't build this on hunters or range characters, so that's the one thing. Shadow Drinker, I feel like it's slightly underrated. I'm going to throw it in B. It's just kind of hard to fit in the build. You want to go CDR early game. It gives you flat pen. So you want to build it early game, but you want to get that CDR on earlier. So it's like a Jotun's Hydras is usually better to rush. Shogun's is still a pretty decent item. Good for Soul Laners. Gives you 40% attack speed now. No CDR on anymore. I'll actually even throw it in A just because auto attack warriors make such good use out of it. And supports can also build it, and it's always good. Why does this look like the same sigil as Infused? Oh, okay, so this is Sigil of the Old Guard. I'm pretty sure this is Infused, yeah, if I remember correctly. So this is Sigil of the Old Guard, the mitigation sigil, which I think is amazing. A+, not quite meta-defining just because it's hard to get away with, which isn't a knock on the item itself, so maybe I should throw it up there, but we have to take it into consideration at least a little bit. But yeah, it just makes you so tanky, one of the few actual tank items in the game. Silver Branch really not that great, hard to overcap on a lot of hunters, so it's more of a niche item, but it does have a 10% pen on it, and you can get a ton of power on characters like Apollo or Artemis or crazy attack speed steroid gods with the right build. They can give you like 100 something power, 140 or something crazy. Soul Eater, honestly, just not a good item anymore. I would throw it in B. The reason it's not as good is because you can just go Jotun's Glyph, which gives you ability lifesteal and gives you base stats that you'd rather prefer on most of the characters you're building on. Soul Gem is decent after the buffs they gave it. It's good in, I'm going to throw it in B+ because there's a really crazy build right now with Gem of Focus where you go Gem of Focus, Tablet, Breastplate, Reaver, Soul Gem, just proc items with a Gem of Focus upgrade, the 15% damage increase, increasing all your procs. Just insane for that. Reaver, honestly, a good mage item. If you're playing mages, you're going to be building this item, or you should be, so you can actually threaten tanks. So definitely A, should be in every build basically. Sov is fine into physical heavy comps. Definitely still a good aura item, good base stats. Spartan Flag's actually a lot better now. They gave it protections on the upgrade. Before it just had like power and no actual protections, just like health or something. Now that it has protections, very viable. Spear of Deso, very strong mage item. Definitely want to have that, and most of your builds can really help you snowball a fight if you get a kill at the beginning, get all of your abilities back. One of the few reasons you should play mages because physicals don't even have a Spear of Deso option. Spear of the Magoose, not the greatest. I'd throw it in B. A lot to be desired there. Spectral, I'll throw in. I don't like this item is bad, and I hate building it. But the more and more I've like messed around with actual tank builds with like mitigation, if you go mitigation build plus Spectral and they have crit, their ADC hits you for nothing. But the problem is that you would probably just rather be playing a character that can actually threaten them and kill them, like a Bologna with a, like Acts of Animosity and more damage in their build or something like that. So, it's teetering between A and B+. I'm going to throw it in B+. Bobble, not a great item. Not much to talk about there. Spirit Robe, still good. It's always an option. I haven't been building as much lately because I'm already at max mitigation with a lot of my builds with Sigil and Prophetic. And something I talked to Deathwalker about as well, if you get a 3k defense spot plus Prophetic, you're already at max mitigation. So a lot of times it's just wasted. Staff of Mirrodin, a very strong item. Like I was talking about before, you go like at full build with like percentage increase with like Staff of Mirrodin, Roger Tahiti, Gem of Focus. Basically, if you're playing a mid-mage, they should be able to use Staff of Mirrodin effectively if you want them to be meta, like Vulcan, Thoth, Kukulkan, etc. Stone of Binding, fine item, good damage from the passive, and then of course good base stats. So Gaia, Not great. I just like building it in the mitigation build. With the mitigation build, it shoots up a lot, but in every other build, it should just not be built. Especially if you're going bluestone. If you go bluestone, Stone of Gaia, you just are way too squishy with that. Sundering Axe is really not that great of an item, so I'm going to throw it in B+. The upgrade is just kind of horrible. It's just the fact that base Axe was, and maybe still is, a little bit too strong, so you have to have something to upgrade. Sometimes I even sell the Sundering Axe late game. Tablet, really not that great of an item. It is good in that proc build that I was talking about, but it's just in that build that you would want to build it. Just trying to stack that up while the support just runs at you with his mystical and just farms you, just not the play. Tainted Amulet's actually really good. It's a very good item. Same with Tainted Breastplate. It's just hard to get away with that early game starter because it gives you no MP5 and no like guaranteed sustain because you got to be in combat being near the enemy and taking their healing with the Tainted. But yeah, honestly, both the upgrades are very strong. I'd throw it in A. Tailspin, just a fine magical defense item. Good passive if you're sieging a lot with War Flag. Really nothing too crazy. Telekine's pretty horrible after they nerfed it. It was really good at the beginning of last year, I think, and then it just got nerfed into Oblivion, so I throw it in B. Maybe zoom out a little bit more so we can see everything. Alternate Timeline. If you're playing mages, going an alternate timeline character is very good. I highly recommend it. Crusher, actually pretty bad in my opinion. Don't really think you should build it over Heartseeker. You can throw it in at the end of your build with a proc physical build, but like for the most part, it's just really not that great. That base attack speed maybe is kind of handy, but Xe itself is a fine item. I'd throw it in A. It shoots up when we talk about the glyph, for sure, but you know, it's always a good item to have. You should have it in every hunter build. Helps you shred objectives, shred people in front of you, the tanks, everything. Titansbane, good item as well. Good, that proc. Remember, with the proc from Titansbane does not apply to your hit effects, so your Heartseekers, your Crushers, so that's something to keep in mind. It only applies to the ability itself, so, but it's still a good item. Toxic Blade, outshined. It's just like the little brother to Envenom Executioner now. It's just kind of troll. It does lower their attack speed, which Envenom doesn't do, but not great. Transcendence with the flat pen is actually pretty good, and it's part of the reason Fizz mids are so good right now. You go Jotun's Transcendence, you're just going to be hitting so hard. So yeah, no CDR on it does hurt it a bit, but Typhon's B+, still a decent item for mages to get some pen. I forgot that was also Karen's Obsidian plus Typhons for 20% pen options, and you can go Red Tiki with this, give you a little bit of damage, not bad. War Banner, I actually think should never really be bought over Spartan Flag now. It's way too reliant on minions dying near you to get the passive effect, so honestly, I'd throw it in B. I don't think you should ever build it over Spartan Flag now. It's the better option. Warlocks just takes a little bit too long to get online. It does give you a little bit of health and stuff, and you could get it by hitting enemies. You don't have to, or hitting enemy gods. You don't have to hit minions now and stack it up in that early game. So it's fine. Wingblade, just a fine counter build option. They have a lot of slows, especially in the support role. You can slam it in your build. Okay, and that's all the items. Now we can talk about the claws, or the glyphs. I believe that's all the items. Are we missing anything? Oh, you know what we're missing? We're missing the hammer. The hammer heal items? Because there's CAD clubs. Where's Segment Scepter and Vital in them? Oh, well, for some reason those aren't here. But all of those items are just fine, and I build them on characters that can heal. It's really not that big of a deal that we're missing them. Are we missing anything else? I don't know. Anyway, let's just move on. Go to the glyphs. Bancroft's Claw. Really not that great. The shield isn't that relevant anymore. I think if you're playing characters that can utilize like being in the middle of a fight and getting some shields like Hades, Zhang, it can be fine. Same thing with Nimble, just really not that great. I don't really think you should be playing magical ADCs, and if you are, it's going to be a little bit harder to build Bancrofts. Maybe Bancrofts, I was talking about before, Nimble with Rejuvenating Heart and some rings and stuff could be decent, so I'll throw it in B+. A Breastplate Determination, still a very good one-stop shop for all the defense you need in a game. Good CDR. Of course, it's the glyph. And I also think the blue glyph is really strong, especially on the characters that can use it well. You got to be using characters that can ult and be standing near the ADC, so keep that in mind. Of course, we should throw this in meta-defining broken, but I actually think it's a bit overrated. That's my hot take, and because of that, I'm going to throw it in A+. Deathbringer's still very strong, of course, and we'll keep that there. I think this item's better, even. Envenom Executioner combined with an ODC spell, AoE anti-heal. Also, shields are so prevalent right now, so the anti-shield you get from that, very good. And because of that, you should really never, ever build this over Envenom Executioner, so I don't even throw it in B. Amulet of Silence, I actually think is very underrated. I really like this this glyph. The 1.5 second silence in team fights with your autos is just crazy. It's also bugged, so your teammates' abilities are stacking it up. Just insane for CC chaining in a fight and making it very hard for people. Amulet Stronghold or the Heart Ward Glyph that gives you a bunch of magical protections, very good. That has the highest base magical protections in the entire game if you have any relevant physical protections in your build. Jotun's Cunning, just a fine item, B+. Vigor, however, Jotun's Vigor is much better. I would throw it in A+. There's the movement speed that you get from the passive plus the crazy amount of ability lifesteal. It's honestly dictating the meta. And like I said, it's basically the Soul Eater's big brother from down here. Just much better, A+. Magi's Revenge, just a fine item. I'd throw it in B+. Same with Magi's Shelter. More of counter build options like the Magi's base itself. Glorious Pridwin, which is the red Pridwin, which is the one that does a lot of damage. I think it's very strong. Should have it in basically every tank build. However, I think Blue Pridwin, which was the better one before, is a lot worse now. And the reason for that is because of Inventive Executioner at the top of your screen. It reduces shields by 40%. So you're going an item that's just supposed to give you a big shield, and it's already getting reduced by this item that every tank, or not every tank, every ADC should have when you're diving them. So Blue Pridwin is a lot worse. This one, a lot better. Bewitched Dagger, really not that great in my opinion. I think it's fine for an attack speed, or I think most of the time you're going to be going this Relic Dagger. Eldritch is a lot better because the increased protections in team fights is going to be really nice for you, and the ability to see wards around Fire Giant. It's very good. Calamitous, B+. It's a fine upgrade. Same thing with the other Auto 280. So you're going to notice with some of these glyphs, they're just fine. Same thing with Rune Breaking. I think Flameform is slightly better because it allows you to proc your axe in the early game, which is nice in the early to mid game if you can upgrade that. Plus, it keeps people in combat, and it just applies this like damage circle that like it's gonna be awkward for some people to walk through. So yeah, I'd say the Rune Breaking is actually slightly underrated because it's just hard to see the immediate impact that it has because it's not like a number that you can see. It just increases and decreases damage. But yeah. Aegis, I'm just gonna go ahead and put Aegis and Beads in A+, and you know what you're thinking, oh, Beads Aegis is bought by carries in every meta, so of course it's always gonna be relevant. But it's actually very relevant right now because carries get their actives upgraded very easily with Beads and Aegis. With how the actives work now, or relics, is you have your quests, and they can just get naturally upgraded, and the more they're upgraded, the less the cooldown they have. They're just always up, so they're very, very good right now, A+. Of course, they are always necessary, but necessary doesn't mean they're good, and they definitely are good right now. So Divine Barrier, I honestly think it's decent. I'm going to throw it in B+. It's just underbought a little bit because other relics are probably better, such as Bracer, which I'll throw in A. Always good around objectives, good at chasing and running away from people, especially once you get it upgraded. Blink, always going to be relevant, A+. Good for junglers, good for soul laners, good for aggressive supports right now. For some reason, this shard was over here. We'll go through all the relics, then we'll go through the shards. Horrific, meta-defining, absolutely broken. The upgrade is one of the single most broken items in the history of Smite's existence. It does like 18 things and then does 10 things more, depending on how the fight goes. So just insane. And because it's so good and it has anti-heal on it and it's bought every game, Meditation, a lot worse. I'm going to throw it in B+, not nearly what it used to be because you're not going to heal at all because of Horrific. Everyone's going to have Horrific for you. But the cooldown that it gives your teammates can still be really useful. Shell, I'm going to throw it in B+ as well. The only upgrade is the Phantom Shell now, so you're going to be building it in games where there's Odins or Ymirs or stuff that's going to block you off, so you can throw that in there. Sprint actually a lot better now. It's basically with a Frenzy plus Sprint combo because they took Frenzy out of the game. Very good, and it's good at countering Horrific, although it's just not nearly the same because Horrific is that busted. Sundering, literally never build this item anymore. Been nerfed way too much. No reason to build it. Thorns, very good. I wouldn't say quite broken and meta-defining, but a very strong relic, especially for soul laners. I like to build it in most games. TP, very good. A+, it always will be good. Or not always. They could literally make it horrible if they wanted to, but they haven't, so. Meta-defining, Golden Shard, 100%. Build it in solo, build it in ADC, build it in sometimes even in jungle, a lot of the time in jungle, sometimes in mid on the physical hunters. Very, very strong item. It's just a mini golden gooseberries that you get to have at least until level 12. It's so strong. Sturdy Shard, only really building in this as support and sometimes in solo. It's fine. Gets the job done. This item is pretty bad. I even forget what it's called. I think it's called Vibrant Shard, I think. It's basically supposed to be the party punch from last year. It's just not good. Don't really ever want to build it in jungle, even especially when you go Horn Shard or Golden Shard. Another item that's kind of obsolete is Wing Shard. It's really weird to go Wing Shard when you have Golden Shard in the game because most auto attackers are going to have Golden Shard. They don't really want Wing, so yeah, B+. Vision Shard, just really not the great item. Just go Sturdy Shard. And then Horn Shard, still pretty good. I'll throw it in A. Not what it used to be, but definitely very good on cooldown-based characters or ability-based characters. So worth building. So yeah, that's basically it. Didn't get to do the starter items, but talked about it a good bit. Right now, Axe and Bluestone are probably your top 2 Soul Lane starter items. Both pretty good. Mid, you can go Sands of Time or Conduit. It's really up to you. In support, most of the time you want to go War Flag and be aggressive, but Sentinels and Benevolence are still fine. ADC, always build Leather Cow, unless you can cook up a build with Ornate. That's fine if you want to go that route and go crit, but Leather Cow's the play. And in jungle, both Eye and Boombas are worth it, just depending on your character. And sometimes Mannequin's Mace, if you're playing like Erling jungle or maybe like Osiris jungle or whatever, you can go Mannequins. But yeah, that's basically it. I think that's all the items in the game. I had to take a tier list from last year and add a bunch of items, so I don't know if I missed anything. Hopefully I didn't. There's quite a lot on the board right now, and there might be even more. Who knows? So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this item tier list. We were able to speedrun it all in 35 minutes. Not too bad. If you have any more in-depth questions about specific items, let me know down in the comments below. And yeah, that's basically it. Stay safe and healthy as always, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.